Hi guys, in this video I'll be going through the different types of Brembo calipers that you get as standard and as optional extras on F chassis 1, 2, 3 and 4 series BMWs, including the M cars of the same chassis. We'll go through the caliper differences first, then we'll move on to do the discs and the disc combinations that you get with these. Then we'll talk a little bit about pads, and then we'll cover some second-hand buying advice if you're buying these second-hand, and I'll just give you a few tips of what to look out for when you're buying these used. Let's start with the rear calipers. So you have a 2-piston rear caliper on these cars, which have the Brembo option on them. And most people think that there's only one type of these calipers, which is in fact incorrect. There's actually 2 types of these calipers. They look exactly the same, they fit exactly the same. The only difference is their piston size. Okay, so if you look at this caliper here, here is the identification of the piston size. So you have P2 44. So P2 stands for 2 pistons and 44 stands for the piston size. And if you look at this caliper here, it says P2 40, which means that this caliper here in fact has 40mm pistons, unlike this one here. So just make sure you check which one your car will need if you're retrofitting these. Moving on to the front calipers, you have 2 types of these also, and let's start with the larger ones on the left, and then we'll move on to the smaller ones on the right. So the larger ones are 370/380 type, which means they are compatible with 370mm disc and 380mm disc, and these have 4 pistons of 40mm in diameter each. Moving on to the smaller type, they're very much the same, apart from which disc they're compatible with. These are compatible with a 340mm disc, and they have the same size pistons as the larger ones. So just by looking at these calipers next to each other, you can tell that they're almost identical, apart from where the mounting points are. So with the larger ones you'll have this arch much more prominent, where with the smaller ones it's a lot more shallow. And if you can't see the back of the caliper and you're looking at buying these second hand without having to ask too many questions, you can actually tell, if you can just look at them from the front, which type of caliper it is. Now, the smaller calipers are available in 2 versions. They are identical, but you can get them in unfinished grey type, which literally has no coating on it, and you can get them in the powder coated blue, which is Montego blue, I believe, from factory. So the calipers themselves are literally identical. There's no difference in them whatsoever, apart from the coating that's on them, as you can see here. And finally, speaking about caliper differences, the last point to mention is their orientation. A lot of the time when these calipers are being sold, they're not being sold as a matched pair, and sometimes you have 2 left or 2 right, and sometimes you have one of the larger ones and one of the smaller ones. I've already told you how to identify which is the larger one, which is the smaller one. The other thing to look out for is whether it's the left hand side and the right hand side. So the left hand side calipers will have the M upside down on the caliper when it's positioned in this position, and the right hand side calipers will have the M correct way round. And of course the bleed nipple always goes on the top. So if you imagine to yourself where the caliper would be mounted on the car, and you look at where the bleed nipple is, that will also identify which side caliper this is. Moving on to the discs, and we'll start with the rear ones again. So the rear ones you'll see in this row here. We'll start with the non-M discs. So there's 2 types of the non-M disc, and there's 1 type of the M disc. So the non-M discs are 345mm in diameter, and they have the same height or offset. The only difference is the size of the handbrake that's compatible with these discs. So there's 2 types of handbrakes that are used on the F chassis cars, 185mm handbrake and 160mm handbrake. And you can see the difference if you look at them next to each other. The size of the hat is very different. And if you turn them around, the size of the cavity for the handbrake is also different. So just keep this in mind when you're buying a second-hand kit. Make sure you know what size of the handbrake your car has, so you know what disc to select. And finally, there's the M disc. So the M disc is 370 millimeters in diameter. It's the same thickness as those discs, 24 mil. It has the larger handbrake on all the M cars, the 185 mil handbrake, but this disc is only compatible with the M cars. So if you're thinking about using this larger disc with the M Sport rear calipers on a non-M car, it will not work because the mounting points for the caliper are in a different location on the M car to allow for this bigger disc. So if you're trying to fit these, your caliper will simply just hit the edge of the disc and you won't be able to bolt it on, and it just won't work. So don't use this on a non-M car. Moving on to the front discs. So with the larger calipers, 370, 380 type, you have the 370 millimeter disc, which is used on non-M cars, and you have the 380 millimeter disc, which is used on M cars. That's why you have the 370/380 stamped on the back of the caliper, because they can be used with either. These discs are not interchangeable. So if you have a non-M car, use that disc. If you have an M car, you have to use this disc. And the smaller calipers, the 340 mil type, they use a 340 mil disc, like this one that you see here. It's a little bit smaller than the 370 mil disc, but the contact patch is exactly the same. And final point to make, talking about discs, is these discs are available from factory only in two-piece version. So the two-piece version is a riveted aluminium bell type. So the bell and the disc are two different parts riveted together by rivets. And the one-piece version, which is not available from BMW, is only an aftermarket option. So if you're buying a non-original disc, you can also buy it in one-piece version. My recommendation is to stay away from the one-piece version. Yes, they are cheaper, however, they're a lot more prone to warping or disc thickness variation. And I've just personally not had great experience with them. So if you're buying the front discs, also always go for the two-piece. With the rear ones, it's very much the same story. This here is a pair of original discs, so they are two-piece. But then again, they are available in one-piece versions as well. On the rear, I would say save yourself some money and go for a single-piece version, because this isn't as critical on the rear as it is on the front. And finally, these discs are also available for non-M cars in drilled and grooved versions, which is the M Performance variant. And you're more than welcome to go for those. The only thing I'd say be careful of is that they can be noisy. Noisy in the sense that when you brake, and sometimes when you don't brake, as the air passes through the grooves and through the little dimples you have in the disc, it makes a clicking sound. And I found that a lot of people find that quite annoying, and they've switched back to smooth OEM type discs rather than having the M Performance that are clicking all the time. Finally, moving on to pads and fitting hardware. So with the pads, let's look at the front pads. There's two types of front pads you can get. You have the standard M Sport pad made by Jurid, and you have the M pad, which is only for M cars. It's not, but it's only available on M cars, which is made by Texta. And they are exactly the same in fitment, and they are interchangeable, so you can use either one of these with any of those calipers, including the larger ones. The only difference is the compound. So the M pad has a slightly more aggressive compound, and it gives you a slightly better bite, and obviously they are more expensive and they don't last as long, but they are very performance orientated. Where the M Sport pad is a lot more road friendly, it lasts a little bit longer, but it doesn't give you quite the same pedal feel. So again, they are interchangeable. So if you are retrofitting, let's say, smaller type of these brakes onto your car, the 340mm type, you can use the M pads with them. And it's very much the same case on the back. You have the M Sport pad and you have the M pad. Again, they are exactly the same and they are interchangeable. So the choice is yours. These are a little bit more expensive, but in my opinion they're worth it. But these are also just as good. And then finally, talking about pads, there's also a third type of pad, which is in the car world is known as the Mickey Mouse pad. Bendix isn't quite the name I'd go with if I was making brake pads, but anyway, they are available. They are very cheap. They do fit fairly well, but they don't stop very well at all. They last okay, but they make your brake pedal feel like there's a marshmallow under it, and it feels like there's actually something wrong with your car. So if you want to save money, you can buy these, however they're not very good. So personal advice is stay away from the crap pads. Moving on to the fitting hardware. This is the fitting hardware for the front pads, the 2 retaining pins and the anti-rattle clip. And this is the fitting hardware for the rear pads. Most OEMs will advise to replace these every time you replace pads. However, you don't need to do that. Just inspect the pins, make sure that everything is in order, they're not damaged in any way, and they are straight. Make sure the spring is not cracked anywhere, and if that's okay, take a wire brush to it, clean it all up with a bit of brake cleaner, put it back in, and it will be good for another set of pads and maybe more. And finally, the hardware that you get with these, this is the rear hardware. So 16mm drive, M12 bolts, and there's 2 types of front hardware that you get with these. So you have also M12 bolts with captive washers, and it's an 18mm drive, or you get the female Torx drive, which I personally find is terrible. So if you have a choice, always use these ones, because with the E drive they always tend to slip. So just briefly to talk about fitment, with the front, it's actually very, very easy. The fronts go straight on to all the F chassis. Obviously you have to make sure that you're pairing the right caliper with the right disc. They also go straight on onto the E chassis, 1 Series and 3 Series cars. So E82 range, E87, so on and so forth. And the E90 range, so E90, E91, E92, E93, these literally bolt straight on without any modifications whatsoever. They also go straight onto the 2nd generation Z4, the E89. If you check out our page on Facebook, you'll see some of these used on those cars with no issues whatsoever. They literally just bolt straight on. The rears also go straight onto the F chassis without any problems. Again, make sure you're pairing them up with the correct disc and you've gone for the correct piston size in the rear caliper. The only thing to watch out for, sometimes the backplate might be too small. So we advise to trim the backplate instead of replacing it, because to replace it you need to take out the wheel bearing, and it's quite an involved process. So just trim the edge of the backplate if you're putting this larger setup on. Other than that, it's direct bolt on. We will be making another video where we show you how to fit the rear brakes onto the E chassis 1 and 3 Series cars, so E90 and E82, 87. But there is a number of modifications that need to be covered that this video simply isn't long enough. So there will be a video coming on that. If you're unsure about what brake hoses to use with these, if you're retrofitting these to your car, you always use the brake hoses that are specified for your car. The caliper itself doesn't actually matter, because all the caliper interfaces are the same. So you can either keep your existing hoses that are already on your car, or you can upgrade and go for the aviation type braided hoses. I recommend going for the Hell Performance ones, because they have unions which are free spinning, and with most BMWs they normally have a seized union on the pipe side. So having a female union on the brake hose that's actually spinning is very, very beneficial, and it saves you a lot of time and hassle when you're fitting these. When you're doing a retrofit of these brakes onto your car, you will need minimum 18-inch wheels due to the size of these brakes and the size of the discs that they're compatible with. So the rears, the 345mm version will need a minimum 18-inch rim. The front 340mm version will need an 18-inch rim, and the 370mm version will most likely need a 19-inch rim. However, some 18-inch wheels are compatible with those, but they are very, very rare, and they have to have a larger inner barrel just to clear the caliper, because they are really, really large and they don't work with all 18-inch wheels. So just bear that in mind. So I'd like to conclude the video on just pointing out a couple of things that you need to look out for when you're buying these second-hand. Make sure that the bleed nipples are free moving and they're not seized, because very often they can be seized and they need to be drilled out and replaced, and it could be quite a costly job. Another thing to check is the condition of the dust seals. As long as there's no rips in them, you should be okay. Another thing to check is that they're not contaminated. I've seen cases where people have put copper grease onto the seals, and that has damaged the seal. It crinkled up and the seal was useless and it had to be replaced. So just look out for that. I hope you guys found this useful. If you need any more information, if I've missed anything, please give us a shout, drop us a message in the comments, or go to our Facebook page, VYS Garage. We're always happy to help, to provide you part numbers, fitting advice, and so on and so forth. If you're looking at one of these kits secondhand and you're not sure whether you'll fit, just let us know, we'll be happy to assist you. And of course, if you are in the need of one of these kits and you don't know where to find one, give us a shout. We'd be more than happy to source one for you. And we ship worldwide with technical support pretty much available 24/7. So give us a shout. Hope you enjoyed this, and hope to see you all again soon. Thanks a lot.